I'm trying to make here is that, yes, governments would like to make sure everybody is covered, but governments can't be all things to all people. The government health insurance will give you something, but if you want more, you have to go to the private market. 150 to 200 per month. Is that a worthwhile investment or not? All of us in here know friends and families who found it to be a worthwhile investment. At this stage, we like to have an interactive session. Please feel free to ask your questions lined up behind Mr. Clark. There is no such thing as a stupid question. There can be stupid answers, and they can be found in tweets, but there's no such thing as a stupid question. Mr. Clark, you go first.
When God created man, man was clay, and then God breathed the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So it means that the breath is important. And I would like one of the panelists to tell me if they do not believe that if we concentrated more on breathing exercises, if some of the ailments that we suffer from would not decrease. Now we say that most of the modern diseases stem from pressure or tension or stress. But we live in a stressful world. But every day we put stress on stress on stress on stress. And there are certain exercises that can be taken in order to relieve stress. But we do not talk about those exercises. And they are very simple exercises. And one of the simplest things we can do to relieve stress is that when we go home from a hard day's work, put on some soft instrumental music. Okay. Relax. Even in the operation room, I have suggested that to doctors on many occasions. Even in the operation room, you know, when the doctors are operating on people, because most of the times when people go for operations, they are nervous, they are tense, they are stressed out. And that music, that relaxation music, not sparrow and not the boom boom, that you know, instrument, soft piano music, flute, you know, saxophone, relaxes the patient, and even the doctor can do a better job in at operating. My last comment is diabetes and hypertension. Now, these are dangerous exercises, but we don't hear anything about them.
You mean diseases?
Diseases, sorry, diseases. But we don't hear anything about them.
In St.Kitts?
When I was told that I had sugar, I said, oh, so I'm sweet. I mean, the girls used to tell me I was sweet, so I said I was sweet. But I did not know the danger of having sugar or diabetes, because nobody explained it to me. So when I got a little bruise on my toe, I went home. I could be my own doctor. And so I experimented until it was too late. I think something should be done on a daily basis to warn people about the dangers of hypertension and diabetes. And I think a lot of the problems will be solved. Thank you very much.
I just want to compliment the organizers of this panel discussion. Thank you. I want to also take the opportunity to say what an excellent job they did in putting the panelists together, and what a great job was done tonight. I think we really need more of this type of discussions in the community. I have two very short questions. They came pre-planned. One of my concerns as I listen to the television is the problem that they're having in internationally at large in relation to the type of drugs that they're seeing and the effect it's having on young people. I have some friends from my church who go regularly to the hospital, and one of the things they have been complaining about is the number of people they're seeing in the psychiatric ward. And one of the things they are saying to me, has to do with some different types of drugs that they are seeing on the market. I would wonder if one of the panelists would like to spend some time and address that problem there for me. And Dr. Martin, you mentioned that our standard in relation to United States and black people and young people and death and infancy mortality. In terms of general health, lifestyle, quality, how do you think we compare? And what can we do in terms of improvement? Thank you.
Firstly, about the breathing, I think that was the first question. Is breathing enough of an exercise to take care of the majority of the diseases that threaten the life of the nation, the life of the world? So there is a role for deep breathing, for exercises, using big, deep breaths. Those will, of course, use the muscles of the chest wall. And we talk about compartments, different compartments and size of muscles. Those aren't going to be our biggest sets of muscles. It would be the muscles of the legs, the thighs, and the knee to ankle area. So the amount of energy, the amount of literally the amount of burning of fat and sugar that we can do will not be as effective, as big an amount as when we use the muscles of the lower limbs. So yes, there is a role for the big breaths, for the deep breaths, especially if we're talking about some lung diseases. Some studies have actually shown that when you have early changes of asthma, big breaths can help with that. But when we talk about this set of diseases, they're controlling diabetes, controlling high blood pressure, and controlling your weight, therefore not having the impact on your joints, the impact on your heart, the amount of energy burnt will not be that significant with the big breaths. So there's a role for it all. I'm not saying only do the big muscle exercises, there's a role for it all, but appreciate it's all we're talking about. And to link your deep breathing and de-stressing, for sure, the de-stressing, because we know stress to be a independent risk factor for heart disease and for high blood pressure. So there is no minimizing the impact of de-stressing. One of the ways we can de-stress is exercise. One of the ways that we can de-stress is the big breaths, the deep breaths, the playing the lovely music. Not all of us enjoy classical music, so you're going to go with what you like, because some of us find the flutes and the classic piano a bore and a drain, but you like another type of music. So de-stress in whatever version that sweetens you. There is definitely a role for that as well. So I want to say it should be all part of the mix. Don't say only that type of exercise and don't do this other type of exercise. So some persons combine it all with yoga, the use stretching of muscles, the meditation. So it's all part of the mix, and as much as is possible, all the different types you can do, we definitely encourage.
The yogi, they do a lot of meditation, and in the meditation they concentrate a lot on the breath. And it has been proven that meditation causes changes, neurological changes, which of course would have significant impact on your physical, not only physical, but psychological and spiritual, and these can help to lengthen your life. So in that respect, I think that it contributes significantly, but I think everything together works well. One of the things I wanted to touch was the drug issue. I don't want us to look too far for fancy drugs, because I think that if you just go into any supermarket here, there's a lot of different types of alcohol on the shelves. I want us to really pay attention to that I don't want us to think that alcohol somehow gets off the hook because it is legal. It wreaks a lot of havoc on people's life. I see a lot of nurses here, and the nurses must know what I'm talking about. It damages the brain, damages the heart, the liver, the blood vessels, almost even the rectal problems that Dr. Alexander touched on. So we don't need the fancy drugs, the drugs that we use every day, such as alcohol, or even using marijuana in excess and in young people who are not properly developed in their neurological structure can suffer damage from the marijuana. And the combination of these together really is causing a significant impact. And of course, the fancier drugs like the crack cocaine that people experiment with here. So we don't have to look too far. The drug issue here is a serious issue, or the misuse of these substances, and we really should take measures to ensure that we control them.
The Pan American Health Organization says that we should plan for 5 to 10% of our population with mental, behavioral, and degenerative disorders such as dementia, Alzheimer's. 5 to 10%. The population of St. Kitts and Nevis is just under 55,000. 5 to 10% means there are about 2,000 to 5,000 persons with mental, behavioral, and degenerative disorders. Is that a far-fetched figure? The answer is no. I'm sneaking a peek at my mental health colleagues. They have 600-700 people registered in the mental health clinics combined on both islands. Of course, a lot of men who get their medical care in a rum shop are not in the mental health clinic. All right? So that's another thousands. All right? So that figure, 5 to 10% of the population having mental, behavioral, and degenerative disorders is not far-fetched. So, psychiatric ward. Psychiatric ward is when things, how do they say it in the song? Don't push me because I'm close to the edge. Means people have gone over the edge. All right? Your psychiatric ward fills up if your community mental health program is weak. All right? So that's why the previous government and now this government, you have the Mental Health Day Treatment Center here in St. Kitts and a similar type of facility in Nevis to keep people out of hospital, keep them working. All right? So, again, listen to what Dr. Alexander said to you. It's not about any fancy drugs. Alcohol, numero uno, number one. Then the issues with marijuana and cocaine. Family stress. Women and men who have been raped. People who have lost assets because, family squabbles, dead left, people fighting over dead left, that kind of stuff. So there are a number of reasons why a psychiatric ward will fill up. All right? So Alexander wanted to say something. Want to take the question? Let's take the question. Go ahead, sir.
Prosperity and a successful 2018. Not forget good health. As the doctors on the panel so eloquently put, my question is, if good health is relating to what we eat, what can be done to lower the high cost on fruit and groceries in St. Kitts, which prevents the regular people from affording them on a regular basis? That's one. The Dr. Alexander so rightfully put, to the scary thought of a plane or boat can't come into the Federation of St. Kitts for whatever reason, which we depend on for our supply of food. What can we do or should we do to improve the agriculture system? And for growing our crop, we have a fertile land here in St. Kitts. to create a better marketing outlet to grow and also export?
Let's take another one. That question, let me see if I got that question. Why is it that the high salt, high fat, high sugar stuff is cheaper than the healthy stuff? Okay.
The question I'm going to ask actually touches on what Dr. Martin just said, because this is a bit of a personal experience, but I have a friend who is going through mental issues. He has mental health issues. And the first thing, and me and my mother and other people had debates about this, the first thing people jump to when they hear things like this is, oh, he had a spranger joint. Somebody gave him some drugs. No, he gone crazy for the rest of his life. And I think that undercuts mental health issues. Because sure they have crossover. Like you said, if you have mental health issues, you would go to the rum shop. You might take drugs. But I don't think it has to be one or the other. Like, so now we just kind of write them off and left them to deteriorate. And on top of that, I'm not an expert at any kind of medical health, but even some of the drugs I see that we do administer to the people who have mental health, I could be wrong, but some of the changes I see them go through, they're not even the same person at all. So I don't know how effective these drugs are, because, you know, you'd watch abroad and you see people dealing with schizophrenia, people dealing with bipolar disorder. And yeah, they're not going to be the exact same person, but they seem to be able to function a little bit more normally than I see everybody here who get on these drugs, and then they're a completely different person. They just walk around like a zombie. So then I would understand how the person would not want to take these drugs anymore. But then when they don't take these drugs, they can't function. They start acting out, and then they just end back up in the psyche ward again. So, and then I don't even go into therapy, because then that's not something that we, you know, it's not even just here. Black people all around the world, we don't like therapy. We feel you're weak when you go to therapy. So, that's the enemy question, but I don't know how we could improve like mental health care.
These are solid questions. Cuthbert is going to tackle how we can destigmatize people who are different to us. Garfield is going to take on the cost of food thing. Just to let you know that the newer medications used in mental health have less side effects, but they are very expensive. Drug companies make sure they get back their money. And sometimes they price the drug according to the per capita income of the country. So if you as a country could afford $100 a pill, they sell it to you for $125. But if you can only afford $1.25, they sell it to you for $125 to keep out the competition. That's part of the mix. We in the OECS, we buy drugs together. We are kind of middle income, you know, so, but still we struggle. You are correct, we struggle with the medications for mental health because they're very expensive. That's not to excuse anything. That's just to tell you reality. Okay? So you have to use what you have. All right.
I want to go way back to the first question, because that's the thing about having the ongoing question. Sometimes each question gets juicier and we focus on that one. But Mr. Clark mentioned the yogis and they having that high life expectancy and all those good stuff. And he linked it to the breathing and the exercise alone. But we got to understand, a yogis, that's cultural. That's what they do every day. That's a holistic approach to life. So it's not just the breathing exercise that give them all these benefits afterwards. Because I remember some time back there was what's called the French paradox. In that the French were eating diets in high saturated fat and lots of stuff that they shouldn't be eating, but yet were living longer, had low incidence of heart disease. But it was later realized that that's because they had bigger families sat down for dinner and enjoyed life and took care of each other, and there was lots of empathy within the society that then gave them those benefits. So I want us to look more holistically and start thinking towards these superfoods and comparing us to the Japanese and comparing us. Lots of these comparisons don't take on a holistic approach. The high cost of food and the accessibility to health, like I said, that's policy. We'll be beating our head against the wall if we try to make this individual and start the blame game. The governments have to come together and start to think about policy. Our food security is a big issue. Most times, because I tend to wean and I'm bob and weave, I'm a Pan-Africanist, but I'm also a Caribbean man by heart. I totally believe in nothing wrong with bringing in food from Dominica because we don't have the landmass to sustain everything that we want. We have to think about, because I'm going to give you one example, and Dr. Martin mentioned it earlier. We're buying our drugs together in bulk, so it's cheaper for everybody. And that took years before that happened. You know what? When that happened? That happened after persons stopped telling the governments that we are losing persons and we need to get together and buy these drugs. It came after people dollarizing it and showing them the amount of persons who had diabetes, the complications of diabetes, who later on couldn't contribute to society, and how much monies were being lost, and how much governments were being paid up or were paying out. And that's how they came together to buy these drugs. So why are we coming together to treat, but not coming together to prevent? How does an individual mother of 5, and I'm going to give this example, with 2 jobs, really get to sit down and philosophize and get to the point where she understands I have to buy these foods and I have to take more time out if she doesn't have the time? It has to be a policy. We have to make the food basket wider and that involves healthier and fresher foods. So unless that mentality is changed, it won't. There was also talk of the psychiatric issue. I remember first going to Molyneux and what was called the sugar belt on that side and seeing the vast amount of alcoholics. But then we operate on the one level here in St. Kitts where we make it a moral issue. If you're drinking, it's because you're weak and you can't hold your drink, or you can't deal with your problems, and it's not a moral issue, it's an addiction issue. And until we start to approach a problem like an addiction issue, that each of us have our addictions, or why we tend to turn to addictions, until we start to focus on that aspect of the problem, forever and ever mental health issues is going to be taboo. I think Jai said it best. This is a known problem throughout the US as well, amongst blacks, amongst persons, amongst minorities. But for a lot of us, it's socioeconomics. We just think that for you to go to a counselor, it is expensive. So again, that's a policy issue where we start to identify the flags very early in our children, where we start to identify the personalities and the personality traits that lead to addiction and that lead to mental health issues. Because I don't want persons to think that our mental health nurses are out there and they're not doing their job and they're only just dosing up these persons with drugs. There are lots of families that are bringing these patients to us late. There are lots of teachers and persons in society who are not identifying the traits and identifying the flags. So when they do come to the system, they're at an extreme. So I don't want us to think that our healthcare system isn't doing enough. I think one of the hardest working persons we have is our nurses. So that's why anybody calls into a program and ever tries. Of course, just like any other job, there are those who drop the ball and who may not be in there for the right reason, but the majority of our nurses are hard-working nurses without thanks day in, day out. They epitomize what empathy is. So I want us to look towards the true answers to some of our problems.
Destigmatizing mental illness, because, well, how many of us are one hurricane or one earthquake away from losing it? Cuthbert?
A lot of us are. But mental health issues, I believe, the stigmatization in the Caribbean especially, I don't think we've actually progressed culturally, especially compared to the USA, where it's becoming a little bit more acceptable to to have a mental illness. They treat it just like any other disease, like diabetes or high blood pressure. And it all comes back to being more educated, like I stated previously. Education is important, so once we can educate people that this is not something to victimize people for having a mental illness, and it's a disease that they can't control, then we can progress in treating these people. They would actually come in to be treated. People need to be first able to identify if they actually have a problem, whether it's schizophrenia or bipolar or some type of addiction. And I think we also need to teach family members how to actually take care of these individuals and not segregate them.
We're going to continue on this point because it's a very important point, because we're talking about 5 to 10% of our population. I said, how many of us are one hurricane or one earthquake away? I forgot one other thing. So let's go. How many of us are one hurricane away from the edge, one earthquake away from the edge, and one election away from the edge? I'm going to ask Dr. Drew to... It's good. I think laughter is good medicine, right? It's good that we let that one out, right?
I'll answer that very quickly. I had the opportunity to live, interestingly, in the largest capitalist country, the socialist country, one of the last socialist country, communist country, and the only one in the Western Hemisphere, and then to live in the Caribbean. And I saw the range of lifestyle, really. What is alarming here is that we are now adopting a type of American lifestyle, which I think is having a tremendous impact on our healthcare, because we don't have the money that America has to take care of all these fancy diseases that we see coming on when we adopt these lifestyles. For example, the way we eat. Can you imagine? You go and you have these supersized hamburgers. And Garfield mentioned it, it's a status thing now based on what you eat. If you can go to KFC and show a KFC box, it's a big status. If your child were to come to school with a mango and one were to come to school with a KFC, who you think would get the most attention? Or you think everybody would think is the most prestigious in the school? And so we have it totally reversed. And it is very sad that it is like that, and it's affecting us. Let me just give you one example as I end this lifestyle. I visited a European country, and one of the things that amazed me is that this is a high-income country. I think the income is probably higher than the United States per capita. And I stood on the corner with another colleague and said, let's see how many overweight people we can find. And I mean, we just stood there and could not find an overweight person. In the Scandinavian countries, imagine that. I remember when I went there and they served me some food, I was like, man, they think I'm a child here? What is this they're giving me? But after the first week in being there, I was leaving back food. And that taught me that a lot of the times when I'm here eating, I'm eating excessively and unnecessarily so. So when I hear people say that, boy, it's very expensive. Well, if sugar is expensive, don't use 5 teaspoons, use 1 teaspoon. If the rice is expensive, don't use a whole cup, use a half a cup. If you can't afford the Kool-Aid, drink water. And if you can't afford the bus every time, walk a little distance. And you will live longer and save some money, correct?
Before you speak though about the how can we make vegetables, fruits cheaper? I agree. If we're talking about what we're going to procure, what we're going to buy, that would be a policy thing. But we can start to grow our own little bits. So the vegetable in five pots at home, 5 flower pots at home, and there's this fancy stuff of upside down growing your tomatoes, and you can actually do, and of course, gardening is very good exercise. So you would be killing several birds with the having a little backyard with your vegetables, with your cucumber, with your lettuce, with your tomato. As you work the ground, therefore get your exercise and become more self-sufficient. We're talking more about the next hurricane. We're getting lots of category 5s now. We saw what the supermarkets looked like right after Hurricane Maria. So do your own bit. If it is to talking about supplying your family of 5, everybody doing that, you will have major impact on your own family. So I just want to put that plug for having your own little backyard vegetable plants.
Okay, I would like to say thank you for being so informative. My question has to do with renal failure. You talk about it has increased to what, about 100 patients now. What are the treatments that are being offered? I know of 2. So do we offer both or just the peritoneal dialysis or both?
Hemodialysis, that is cleaning the blood, and then the peritoneal dialysis going through the peritoneum, the abdomen. So both are being done here in St. Kitts.
Of course, the dialysis is only a stopgap. When your kidney fails, you need a new kidney. And a kidney transplant is cheaper in the long run than dialysis. If you know anybody on dialysis, empathy is required because they go through a lot. Yeah. Yes, question here, and then we have one down in the center.
Yeah, good night to everyone. I would like to ask this question probably to the only politician on the panel tonight, maybe to Dr. Joe. The question here is the cost. Oh, you want to Dr. Alexander? I didn't realize that. The cost of healthcare, very important. I think that is an underlying question that we have to ask ourselves. The cost of healthcare is very expensive, and therefore we have to come up with certain recommendations as to reduce the cost of healthcare for our citizens of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and probably maybe Dr. Joe will want to highlight some of those suggestions as we move to reducing the cost of healthcare in the Federation.
I want to thank Dr. Martin for that question. I think Dr. Patrick Martin would have started to mention one or two things about the cost of healthcare. He spoke about the cost per capita in the US, the cost per capita in St. Kitts. And I did talk about the cost per capita in Cuba. Cuba is a country which is not a very rich country, but when you look at the achievements in healthcare, can rank with the richest countries in the world. So it means therefore that at a cheaper cost, Cuba is achieving the outcomes of these rich countries. And when I look at Cuba's model, I see what we can extrapolate to here, take from there and apply it here to reduce the health costs. One of the things that I think we really need to pound on is what I call a robust primary healthcare system. I think that we had a very good start under the leadership of Jane France way back in the 70s, 60s, 70s. In the 60s, when they introduced universal healthcare in the sense that every community basically had a clinic. And I think that was an excellent, excellent start. So what can we do now in order to bring down the cost of healthcare? Let's look at where our monies are being spent. I think we just had mention of kidney disease and the high cost of dialysis. $125,000 per year per patient. Imagine that. Cancer patients, for example, I spoke a bit about cancer. Cancer care is expensive. Cardiovascular care is expensive. I just spoke to Dr. Lawrence earlier before we started, and she said she's amazed by the amount of cardiovascular cases we have here in St. Kitts. And if people were to access care by getting like cardiac catheters, which pass little probes up into the heart and so forth, this would be expensive. So Cuba stumbled onto the solution very quickly. Let's establish a robust primary healthcare system that takes you from the cradle and doesn't drop you when you become 18 years old. It takes you from the cradle straight on to the grave. For example, here in St. Kitts, how many adults here get vaccination? How many of us get vaccination? By the time we leave school, we don't get any more vaccination and we are exposed to all these diseases. And if that is a robust part of the primary health care, we can help to prevent it. Not only that, but we can help to prevent certain cancers. What about having patients and assign somewhere so that they can ensure that they are contacted or reached? I will give you one example as I wrap up. I remember when I was in Cuba doing my rotation in community medicine. There was this one patient who just wouldn't come to the pap smear. And the doctor said, well, we have to close the office today because we have to go look for that patient. And we went on the patient job to look for the patient. You have to come and do this. And when you look at it, that the patient did not want to do it, but that the fact that we made that effort and the patient came in and was able to get it done, the patient was very appreciative. So a lot of roadblocks. So I say the fundamental thing to bring down the health costs in St. Kitts and Nevis is prevention. And to do that, we need a robust, a modernized, a new and updated primary preventative healthcare system. That is what we need.
I just want to add that the primary healthcare system alluded to by Dr. Drew, which started in the 60s. A certain Dr. Cuthbert Sebastian Sr. was chief medical officer. You know him? Okay. And that this primary healthcare system, I have to stand for this one, came out of the 1935 Buckley's Uprising, January 29. I see the people who clap. Some of the young people don't. You got to tell the young people about this now. 3 people killed, 11 wounded at Buckley's estate. And that started a whole bust up throughout the Eastern Caribbean. All right? And the British government sent the Moyne Commission to invest. Why are these Negroes rioting? Well, things were bad. And do you know that the Moyne Commission submitted its report in 1939? But the British colonial government did not release it until 1945. Why? They did not want the Germans to use it as propaganda during World War II. Google it. Moyne Commission. All right. So every person in St. Kitts and Nevis is within 5 minutes crawling distance of a health center. Your question.
Listening to everyone speak is one thing I didn't hear about drinking water. I find people drink a lot of soda and they don't ever drink water. It's free. It's clean here in St. Kitts. Water is very essential. Another thing is portions. I look at people eating in the restaurants and the food is off the plate. It's a portion. If your chicken is bigger than your hand, you need to cut it in half. It's all about changing this. Eating healthy is a lifestyle. You have to change your habits if you want to stay healthy. It's not about being thin. It's about being healthy. You know, that is the most important thing. And eating heavy foods at night, I'm not an expert. It's just how I try to live my life. It's the worst thing you can do. You should be eating your heavy foods early in the day, and at night you drink a cup of tea like you used to do in the old time days. And another thing, demand that you get the best foods possible. Don't just go to the market and buy something because it's cheaper. Read your labels. If you can't pronounce it and if you can't spell it, don't eat it. Don't buy it. You know? Cut down on your animal products. Eat more beans. Eat your animal products 3 days a week. Eat beans. We have to change the way we eat. We have to change the way we live.
Okay, this is going to be the last one. Madam, you were so powerful. We can't add to what you say, you know. Breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and supper like a pauper. You're correct. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Good program and so we have here. My situation is that I went to a supermarket to buy some cheese for my son. And my grandmother always said, whatever you consume is where you're going to be. So when we buy the cheese, trying to get this cheese melt, and it would melt. So I am asking you, what is the think that to combat these things from coming in the island for us to consume these things, because they are very dangerous to our health. And a healthy nation will go forward once we are healthy. But what I notice when we go to the supermarket, you get like the cabbage, you cutting it, you put it on the stove and nothing happening to it. It wouldn't boil. These things are real and they're here because I experienced it with cheese with my son. And I put in this cheese and the cheese just wouldn't melt. And the microwave spinning and nothing. And so we are asking the question what the health organization in St. Kitts is doing to combat these artificial stuff coming into the island. That's my question to the people. Good program.
I mean, judging from your parties, give yourself a round of applause, please. I mean, you could have been home watching Housewives of Atlanta, you know, but you're here. You're here because it is very, very clear. Let's break it down now. Let's break it down now. Every leader in politics, business, and religion, everyone knows that healthcare is dear to people's heart. Eh? All right? So we're going to have some wrap-ups, and during the wrap-ups, we will tie up any loose ends of the questions. 1 minute, starting now.
It's been an absolute pleasure being here tonight. I extend thanks again to the Honorable Marcella Liburd for inviting me to speak tonight. I just want to make 2 plugs in closing. 1, black people don't riot for no reason. Black people don't riot to loot stores and take advantage. Whenever you've seen people in a mass movement riot, it's always for lots of underlying causes. The gentleman behind made a very good input, but I think the lady answered the question even before you asked it, in that there are lots of non-foods masquerading as foods. But the earliest way to take it is if you can't pronounce it, you can't spell it, don't eat it. So if it doesn't melt and it's supposed to melt, then there's something essentially wrong with that. So those are my 2 last plugs in closing. Black people don't riot for no reason. And if you can't pronounce the ingredients on the back, or if you can't pronounce the food, it's no longer food. And nothing that you take off the shelf that's packaged in bottle, box, or plastic could be fresh, even if it says fresh on the container.
And now Dr. Cuthbert Sebastian, is the baby on the panel? I'll give him a round of applause. Give him some encouragement.
Hi, I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, because you really could have been doing anything else. Thank you, the Honorable Marcella Liburd, for putting this on and allowing me to be a part of it. I just want to leave a message, you know, that what I always believed in, that healthcare is the foundation for everything. The economy, people can't work if they're not healthy. You can't do anything if you're not healthy. So I just want everyone to know that everyone has a part to play in the health and the prosperity of St. Kitts. Thank you.
Dr. Cuthbert Sebastian Jury, Jr., recent graduate, University of West Indies at Mona. We're going up in age. For his 1 minute wrap up, Dr. Terence True.
I want to really congratulate the Labour branch of Constituency number 2 and its leader, the Honorable Marcella Liburd. Put your hands together. I think that they have done a worthwhile job this evening. And it shows that politics, when done correctly, can really help to move a people forward. I would like to say that the healthcare system that we have here, there are upgrades that need to happen. I think that, like Cuthbert said many years ago, I decided that I wanted to go and study and further until I think I was competent enough to come back to help the next generation or the next step in the healthcare system, I think that I'm there with many others. Good night, stay healthy, eat healthy.
Dr. Terence Drew, Via Clara Medical School, Cuba, and University of Texas Hospital, Internal Medicine. And forget the age part, now we're going to beauty.
I will allow it. I'm sure I'm the oldest. That's okay. That is quite fine. I'm sure I'm the oldest, other than you. Right, so I again would like to thank the Honorable Marcella Liburd for inviting us to this talk. And we are sure this will, as everybody's saying, should not be the last one. That more should happen. More should happen, that's right. The thrust, as we've been saying all along, is about prevention. And the prevention, therefore not getting sick, therefore able to continue to contribute and do your part. The things to underscore, I like what the second to last questioner spoke about, the need for lots of water and going back to ground provisions, going back to that which is not packaged, going back to that which naturally occurs from the earth is always the best way to go. And you can make them be tasty, I suppose, but you should still go that route. That is the way. And that would help with diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, cancers, even erectile dysfunction. That's the way to go. So thanks for having us and thanks for coming. Good night.
Dr. Caroline Lawrence, University of the West Indies, Jamaica, a specialist in internal medicine and subspecialist in cardiology. Ladies and gentlemen, it was indeed a pleasure having you here. I'll wrap up by saying that our healthcare system, as we know it, was designed in the 60s to deal with malnutrition and infectious diseases. The way in which people get sick and injured started to change in the 1980s. So much so that you hardly have anybody passing away from an infectious disease now. 4%. It's about 4%. The majority of the deaths are due to heart disease, stroke, cancer, complications of diabetes, and homicide. 75% of the deaths in this country are due to those 5. Do you want me to repeat them slowly? 1, heart disease, just like in the richest countries in the world. 2, stroke, just like the richest countries in the world. 3, cancer, likewise. 4, complications of diabetes, likewise. 5, homicide. The healthcare system is divided into 2. Think of it as 2. There's sickness care and there's wellness care. We are here to tell you, and the Honorable Marcella Liburd wanted this message to come out. The sickness care part of it, we have reached a plateau. The dance can no longer pay for those lights. So we have to follow the best at it. Cuba. Wellness care. Taking care of people where they live and work. That is the future, because prevention is not only better than cure, but cheaper too. Thank you very much for coming out. Thank you to Freedom FM. Don't go, oh, wait. Thank you to Island Purified Water. Here, the Honorable Marcella Liburd will have the final word.
Right. Very pleasant good evening to everyone. We want to thank you for coming out this evening. And I want to thank all of our doctors here, Dr. Caroline Lawrence, Dr. Terence Drew, Dr. Patrick Martin. What will we do without him? I don't know what we'll do with him either. Dr. Cuthbert Sebastian Jr. and Dr. Garfield Alexander. QT, one thing. This foundation, I like the idea very much, but must go in the name of Cuthbert Sebastian Sr. That is my little 2 pence. So thank you very much for coming out this evening. I assure it won't be the last, because you can see that without our health, we really have nothing. Thank you once again.